Welcome. A well-organized assessment plan that is linked to the outcomes of the course is an important component of the course design process. A rubric is considered to be an integral part of that process. A rubric is a tool that allows us to organize the grading criteria, specify the different levels, and also specify the weight for each criterion. Here is an example of a rubric that has been used in a Blackboard course. And as you can see, the 3 criteria are listed here, along with the weightage for each of the criteria. Further, we have the levels of achievement that are associated with each criteria. We have the range of percentages that are associated with each of these levels. And we can also include a description for the level. To get to the rubric in Blackboard, we need to get to Course Tools and click on Rubrics. We can set up different types of rubrics. You can have rubrics for assignments, blogs, discussions, journals, and so on. Once the rubric has been created, then we need to associate it with the individual assessment item. For example, this visual here shows how a rubric has been associated with assignment 7.1, whereas this one here is a rubric for discussions that has been associated with a discussion activity. Once the rubric has been associated with the assessment activity, we can use it in the process of grading. For example, while I can enter the score here, I can also identify the level of achievement. I can provide feedback for each criterion, and it will automatically generate the point value. Once that is done, I can still go in and change it, but it provides us with a very systematic and consistent way of grading student work. So now let's take a look at how we set up the rubric in Blackboard. I click on Course Tools and select Rubrics. Initially, the container will be blank, so I can go ahead and create a rubric. For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to use this simplified rubric to create the rubric in Blackboard. So let us assume that this is an assignment rubric. So we can give it a name. As we move down, notice that we can add rows and we can also add columns. Now in this particular case, we have 4 rows that we need to add. So what we should do is we should go ahead and add a row. So now we have 4 rows. Next, what we want to do is specify the criterion for each row. So we would go here, edit, and then drop the criterion and save it. The next one is research, critical thinking, and analysis. Next thing I would do is make sure that the weightage is set correctly. And so to do that, I've got 30, 40, 20, and 10. So we can just go into this field and change it. Now the good thing is Blackboard will tell you if the total is not 100%. Next, let us see how we can set up the levels of achievement. So in this particular case, what you're seeing here, it's set up as a percentage. I personally like to use the percentage range because it gives me an ability to fine-tune the grading that I'm doing. Now in this instance, we have 5 levels and they have been mapped onto A, B, C, D, and F. So let's go ahead and add 2 more columns. And then we are going to label them. So this is an F, and you can use more descriptive titles if you prefer. Now we need to specify the percentage value for each of these levels of achievement. For right now, we're going to use this range, which is 0 to 60. So here I would go in and put in a 60. The next one would need to start at 61 and goes to 70. Now, initially, when you're setting this up, this is a painful process because you have to set this range up for each of the criteria. Once we have set up the percentage ranges, we can now go in and put in a descriptor for each of these cells. For right now, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and click on Submit. So we have now created a rubric for an assignment. Similarly, we can create a rubric for a discussion. However, when I have to create the next rubric, I will not choose Create Rubric, but rather I would go here and I would copy the rubric. And this makes it easier because now I don't need to set up these different levels of achievement and their percentages. I can change this to discussion, and all I would now need to do is change the criteria and the weight for each criterion. Now in this instance, I need only 3 criteria. So what I need to do is go here and delete the row. I also need to make sure that the weightage adds up to 100%. Once that is done, I click Submit, and now I have created the discussion rubric. Now let's see how we can link that rubric to a specific assessment. So since we have set up the discussion so far, I'm going to go into the discussion, and when I go to edit the discussion item, so as I scroll down, there's an option to add a rubric. And since I've already created a rubric, I'm going to go ahead and select the rubric. Check the rubric and click Submit. I want the students to be able to see their grades that have been entered using the rubric. So I would go here and select Yes with rubric scores. And now I have set up this discussion to be graded with the use of a rubric. Click Submit. We will take a closer look at the gradebook later, but let us take a quick view of how this rubric that we have just set up would be used when grading a discussion. So I'm going to go to the Grade Center and click on Full Grade Center. And this indicates that this student has submitted something to the discussion. So I'm going to click on View Grade Details, Grade User Activity, and I see what the student has submitted. Now on the right hand side, I can enter the grade directly into this field here. So say for example 80. I can also click on the rubric. So when I click on the rubric, I now see the categories that I have set up, and I can decide how I'm going to grade this student. So for example here, if I decide that the initial post is going to be C, I can also go and fine tune, and I can say it's a low C or a high C. You can also provide feedback here and save the rubric. You can also save the rubric. Notice that the score updated here, and provide feedback through this field here. And then when I click Submit, the score will show up in the gradebook, and the student will see both the score and the feedback when the grades are accessed.